And that is how I caught the biggest damn trout you've ever seen.
And I'm sure that's exactly how it went down. Right, Robin?
Huh? Oh, yeah. Perfect play-by-play. It's like I was taken back in time.
Oh yeah, smarty pants? Well, how about you tell a story then, huh?
Take it easy, Mike. I'm just messing with you. It actually was a pretty big fish, Sarah.
Well, I'll take your word for it, but I like Mike's idea. Why don't you tell us a story, Robin? Something spooky.
Me? Well, I'm not that much of a storyteller. That's Mike's forte. Especially tall tales.
Hey!
How about you, Sarah?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, Sarah, you're the one who wanted something spooky. I'm sure you have a few ghost stories up your sleeve.
Well, I guess there is one story I can tell you guys. Let me just make sure I can remember it all.
Preferably before the fire dies.
Okay, hold your horses. I found this story on Reddit the other day, and it went something like this. I work in security at Disney World, the happiest place on earth. Typically, I wouldn't say where I work, as obviously there are some pretty strict rules about things employees can put online, but I just don't think I can tell this properly without that context. And honestly, I think this may be it for me anyway with this job. I just can't see myself working here any longer now. I've been with the company for 23 years. The first 20 years I worked in the parks, nabbing shoplifters and rounding up people who were drinking too much for the heat. Occasionally there'd be a fight to break up, but people usually kept it pretty mild. The heat and walking was getting too much for me the last few years, so I asked to be transferred somewhere with AC, and the company moved me to one of their resorts. While the working conditions were 110% better as far as climate and comfort go, the guest issues were trickier, mainly domestics. I guess the expensive and stress of vacation got to a lot of people, and I'd be called by neighboring rooms because some mom and dad were yelling at each other. I tried to suggest they take a nap or go do separate activities for a bit, and that would usually calm them down. But none of that is what I'm here for. I've got to get this out while I have time. 3 days ago, I got a call from management. Apparently, a couple of days before that, housekeeping had went into a room that should have been turned over that day. Turned over is when one guest leaves by 11 a.m. and the next guest checks in around 3 p.m. And all of the guests' items were still in the room. Housekeeping made a note of it and moved on, but during the next 2 days when they entered the room, everything was still there and untouched. I went to check it out, and sure enough, there was an empty room full of luggage, clothes, snacks, some toys, everything a family would need for vacation. The manager had already looked up the previous reservation, and it was for a family. Dad, mom, 2 little kids. I tried to call the phone numbers they had given, but all I got was voicemail. We were a bit stumped, so I made the call that housekeeper could clean the room and take the family's personal items to be held until we got in contact with someone. I went digging into the reservation more. The family had arrived 5 days before housekeeping discovered all of their stuff. I found that the family had paid a parking fee and their vehicle description was listed. A quick walk of the parking lots and I had easily located their vehicle. So that ruled out a car accident or them deciding to just leave all their stuff behind. Next, I saw that they had bought a dining plan. This is when a guest prepays for all of their food. They're given a certain number of credits to use for meals. This family had only used 3 credits, and the last one was 2 days after they checked in. It appeared that the day they arrived, they got here late and probably just stayed on the resort. The next day, they used 2 credits at Epcot. The second day, they used just 1 credit at Magic Kingdom, and it was at breakfast time. Now at Disney, we have something called Magic Bands. Magic Bands are worn by the guests and act as a room key, park ticket, credit card, dining reservation payment, fast pass, a system used to bypass lines, and more. It took some work, but I was finally able to look up this family's fast pass history. The day they went to Magic Kingdom, they had breakfast at a restaurant in the park, rode a couple of rides, and then rode their last ride. It's a Small World around 11 a.m. Finally, it was time to bring in someone else on this. I called an old co-worker at Magic Kingdom and asked him to pull security footage for It's a Small World at the time they wrote it, and I made my way over there. When I got there, my friend was very confused, almost distraught looking. He showed me what he found. There's usually a camera in the direction of where rides load and unload. The footage showed them scanning their bands to use fast passes for the ride and boarding the ride. The footage from the exit of the ride just showed the other people in their car exiting. They weren't there. Of course, we thought the worst. Maybe one of the kids had fallen out, and Mom and Dad and the other kid got off in the middle of the ride to help, and they all got injured or killed or stuck in machinery somewhere. So we shut down the ride. Middle of the damn day. Turned off that earworm music and turned up the lights. Me and my buddy walked that ride 3 times before we called in help. Eventually, there was close to 10 cast members searching, and we didn't even find shit except for 3 cell phones and a hat. I was right stumped. I've kept digging the past couple of days, and I'm not sure who to tell what I found next to. I've called the police, and I suppose they're on their way, but the company has a way of covering up things like this, and I decided I can't live with myself if I don't put out some type of warning. I kept digging into their reservation over the last couple of days, and today I noticed they had purchased Memory Maker. There are photographers all over the parks, and cameras in a lot of the rides, and with Memory Maker, the photos are all free. They automatically get added to a guest's Disney account when the system knows their picture has been taken. And the system always knows. Everyone's whereabouts are always known with the magic bands. Well, I opened up their Memory Maker photo album, and I swear, there's 732 pictures. The first 30 or so are pretty normal. Epcot, a few rides, in front of the castle, but the rest are all in It's a Small World. The rides only take 1 picture per go-around. So it appears as though this family has ridden this ride over 700 times. The first picture is pretty normal. Everyone looked happy. It was a busy day and a full car of guests. The next one is rough to look at. The car is empty except for this little family, and they look so darn confused. The next 10 to 15, I can see Dad getting angry, yelling. Mom is holding on to those 2 kids like her life depends on it, and you can see the kids getting increasingly upset and crying. And it goes on, and on, and on. After 50 or so, it looks like they're trying to get out. In one, the dad is missing. In another, they're all gone. Maybe like they failed early in the ride and tried to walk out, but in the very next one, they're all right back in the damn car. After around 450 or so, I only see the mom and kids. It's just when I look closely, I can see Dad. Maybe just his body now, slumped down in one of the other seats. Since about 675, there's just Mom and 1 kid. Another body in another seat. The mom and kid aren't moving anymore. I think them 2 are still alive, just damn near catatonic. Looking straight ahead, pale. And y'all, I swear on my fucking life, the dolls are moving or something. In some of these pictures, I can tell they aren't where they should be. I even saw one with a doll in the car with this family. I can't look anymore or I'm going to lose my lunch. I closed the album. Its file size has increased since I closed it. God, are there new pictures being added? I see on security cameras that the local PD just arrived, so they'll take over soon. I wish I knew what the fuck was going on, but I also wish this damn thing had never landed in my lap. I don't think I'll be able to update this. After I talk to the police, I think I'm going to walk out of here and never come back. I just wanted to get this out there before Disney feeds the media some bullshit cover-ups as to why a whole family vanished. They didn't vanish. I know where they are.
Hey, not bad, Sarah. That was a pretty good one. I think I even got a couple goosebumps.
Well, thanks, Robin.
Yeah, it was okay. I'm not sure it was all that scary, though.
What? That whole thing with the dolls didn't totally creep you out?
To quote one of my favorite movies, I think my bunny slippers ran away.
You liked it, didn't you, Robin?
Yeah, it was a good spooky story. But I mean, it's not the scariest story I've ever heard.
Oh.
Cheer up, Sarah. Telling scary stories isn't easy. I mean, look at all those creepy spaghetti people on the internet. It's hard work.
Creepy spaghetti people?
Oh, you know what I mean. All I'm saying is that horror is a tricky genre.
Yeah, I guess you're right. What about you guys? I'm sure one of you has a good story.
I don't think I could really do any better than you did, Sarah.
Well, then what about you, Mike? Got any ghost fish stories?
No ghost fish stories.
You're the one being critical of her story. You're telling us you got nothing?
Oh, I've got plenty. But, I'm not sure the two of you could stomach it.
What? We can stomach it just fine.
Yeah. Let's hear this extra super scary story of yours.
Alright then. My father told me a story once. I'll never forget it, for a few reasons. I think it's the first story he ever told me as a child. It's also the story of how my grandfather died. But honestly, that isn't the reason. You hear stories on TV, or sometimes you overhear something in a public place. People talking about ghosts and aliens, and you think to yourself, that isn't real. Just making it up. Or they're mistaken, or they're crazy, or something like that. You just can't believe it. Until something happens. Something that brings it all together, connects the dots in a way you didn't think of before. Maybe it happens to you. Maybe you hear the same story again and again happening to different people. It doesn't take long for the world to become a lot bigger than you thought it was. As I said, this is a story my father told me, but I never believed it, even though he swore up and down it was true. It wasn't until I started clicking around the internet I started to believe. I started to hear other stories, just like the one my father told me. It didn't take me long to believe in the rake. That's not what my father called it, of course. He's never used the internet in his life. He wouldn't know what the consensus has taken in naming it. When he chose to call it something other than it or that thing, he called it a skinwalker, after an old Navajo tale his grandfather told him. But I'll tell you the story, the way he told it to me. We were out hunting one night, he'd tell me. Coyotes. We'd kill them for $50 a skin. They lived on a dairy farm in Ohio. They'd kill calves sometimes. We'd do it every other night because we needed the money. Sometimes, while we were out, we'd come on a deer and kill it. Our landlord didn't mind, and it could feed our family for a few nights and save us money. Anyway, we were done making our rounds and heading home, walking because we didn't have a car or some four-wheeler back then. We'd cut through the woods. That's when we came upon it. Blood. Everywhere. Splattered on the trees and the grass and the creek, everywhere. At first we figured it was a pack of coyotes. We'd seen it sometimes. They can't scavenge and start hunting deer or cattle. The worst was when they bred with feral dogs. But this wasn't like that. See, when a pack of dogs or wolves or coyotes attack something, they do it right. They'll pick off one that's weak or sick or old or just small. They'll hunt it, draw it into a corner, someplace it can't get out of, and they'll run it right to the biggest one, the alpha. And that deer will never see that alpha. It might hear it, but it won't see it. It'll just notice that its throat is gone. And then it'll drop dead. It's quick, it's clean. That wasn't what happened here. Something had run up a den of deer. Coyotes won't attack a den, wolves neither because they'd get too much of a fight. There were 3, I think. 3 bodies, just torn apart. You'd see a head here, a leg here, a torso there. Predators don't do that. They don't leave behind scraps. What had done this hadn't done it for food. It had done it for fun. But we didn't know that. We saw a bunch of carcasses and we think it's something we gotta take care of. I remember my dad telling me to go home. He thought it was a pack of feral dogs. But I wasn't leaving him. And I damn sure wasn't walking through 2 miles of woods alone with nothing but a .22 and a pocket knife. He was only 13 at the time, so a .22 rifle was the only gun he could reliably use. Dad had the shotgun, and I wasn't going anywhere without it. It took me a while to convince him, but we finally began tracking whatever did that. It wasn't hard either. We just followed the blood. Either that thing bled a deer before it got away or dragged one for a mile. I don't know. I know that I'd never seen my dad scared before that night. We started hearing noises. I've been in a lot of woods in my life. I've been all over the world, and I ain't never heard noises like I heard that night. I heard things screaming. Heard deer and fox and rabbits and raccoons and birds, just scared. Keep in mind, this is maybe 12 or 1 o'clock. Except the fox and some birds, nothing was supposed to even be awake. But they weren't just awake. They were moving. I saw flocks of birds that night fly straight into trees just trying to get out of there. Nearly shot a couple thinking it was what we were looking for. But then we saw they were running towards us. They ran right past us, didn't even notice. Then some deer did the same. Then some rabbits, squirrels, foxes, even a couple of wild hogs. These things were supposed to be eating each other, and the only thing they cared about was getting out of there. We should have put it together. That maybe whatever we were tracking, it wasn't something we were supposed to see. And it wasn't something we could kill. I don't know why we didn't just go home. I guess we were curious. I think that was my dad's nature. To go toward trouble, to fight. And knowing what I knew, what my father did during the war, my nature was to stay close to him. We finally get into an open valley. It was normally a soy field, but it wasn't in season, so it was just flat dirt. We saw the tracks then. A lot of the animals fleeing the forest had paved over the land. But where that deer blood was, nothing had taken a single step. Like they were leaving it for us to find. The tracks were shallow. Whatever it was couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds. That didn't mean much. A bobcat weighing 40 pounds wet nearly tore out my damn throat once. All that means is that it's quick and hard to hit. So we follow the tracks, and it doesn't take us long to find where it is. There's this old schoolhouse that sits on top of a hill. Half of it had been ripped out by a tornado, but nobody lived there. Not for a long time. We caught homeless people in there sometimes, or druggies looking for a safe place to shoot up. We figured maybe that was it. Maybe it was some sick kid riding high. But we didn't think that for long. We get within 50 yards, and we hear this noise. A screeching kind of sound. It was sort of made up of 2 different sounds. One was a high-pitched screech. Another was a low-pitched growl. It was making both at the same time. We get within 20 yards, and we hear this sound. I can remember thinking it sounded like paper being torn apart, while something was swinging water in a bucket back and forth. Dad looks at me, kneels down, and whispers, "I gotta stay behind him, 'cause we're about to corner him. Any animal will fight when it's cornered, especially when it's a predator. But we can tell by the tracks that it's just one." He tells me it's probably a single feral dog, probably rabid. The plan is to sneak up on it while it's eating, shoot it, and then keep shooting it till it don't move anymore, then slit its throat. If it gets to Dad, it's my job to shoot it or stab it to get it off him. So he walks up, and I'm right behind him, just a tad to his side, so I can see what it is. I wish to this day I hadn't. It was leaning over a carcass, tearing off its flesh, and throws what it didn't nibble at aside. There's blood all over the brick, glistening in the moonlight. It's pale white, human-looking but not quite human. It had arms and legs like a human, but it sat like a monkey, hunched over. Its hands weren't normal. It had long fingers with claws at the end. So we see that, and my dad hesitates. He wasn't about to fire on a person, so he clears his throat to try and get it to turn around. I swear to God, all the noise just ceased. I ain't never heard true silence before that, and not after it. But for 2 seconds, nothing made any noise, which made it all the louder when it turned around and jumped on Dad. He got a shot off, but I think he missed. If he hit the thing, it didn't mind, but it was on him, tears parts of him off. I start shooting it with a .22 point blank, but it barely bled the thing. I got off 5 rounds and then I start hitting it with the gun butt. But it wasn't even budging. It didn't even register that I was there. It clawed at my dad, taking off bits of his flesh. It started on his torso, ripping off the skin. His tit, then it moved up. It tore off his throat. It tore off his nose, his eyes. It scalped him. Then it started digging in and ripping off the bottom half of his jaw. The little bones in that tube in your neck, then his ribs. I don't exactly remember what happened, but somehow my dad's knife ended up in the thing's shoulder, and my dad ends up on my back. I'm running, and by God, I'm running faster than I'd ever run before or after. And it's following me. I end up back in the woods opposite the ones we'd been in. I'm heading towards my landlord's house because it's half a mile away. I can hear this thing screeching and moaning. I hear the tree branches crack and get thrown around. It sounds like someone's taking an axe to every single tree I pass. It's cracking so loud and often, but I just ain't looking back. Finally, I trip into gravel. I look up and there's my landlord and a bunch of his buddies, drinking around a campfire. I scream and I cry and they come over. I'm telling them to call an ambulance and he looks at me. And I'll never forget what he said. "What is that on?" "What is that on your back?" he asked me. Just as he said, he saw one of those god-awful flannel shirts my dad wore everywhere. It was what's left of my dad. Most of his head, his torso, but nothing after the waist. Suddenly we hear it, screeching. He grabs me, my dad gets thrown on the ground. I'm fighting him, crying, because I think we can still save him somehow. But my dad had been gone before I even picked him up, so he has to pick me up and throw me inside before I come with him. He and his buddies were all inside, unlocking the doors and getting guns. The landlord's asking me, what happened? But I just don't know what to tell him. He pieced enough of it together to understand there was something dangerous out there. All the lights in the house are on and someone calls the cops. They'll be there, but in 15 minutes. We look outside and see it walk in front of the fire they'd made. Don't know what it is. One of them says it looks like an ape. Suddenly something goes through the window. We shoot at it, but it ain't the thing. It's my landlord's dog. Just the body, though. Not his head or legs. We start pushing things in front of doors and windows when we hear something in the garage. I remember one of his friends saying the doors were open. We hear metal and glass just get ripped apart. We put a couch and a TV in front of the door to the garage. It banged around some more, but then it got quiet. Not silent like it was before. We could hear it move around some and the guys were talking, making sure the guns were ready. Someone hands me a pistol. No sooner did I cock the hammer back did we hear something shatter upstairs. Then we heard it screech again. Except now it was louder, and it didn't echo and fade out. Because it was inside. We all rushed to the one door leading upstairs and we got to it just as the thing did. It opened it just a bit and 4 or 5 men just slammed into it. It got its hand through. Someone with a shotgun took care of that. Put the barrel right up to its wrist and pulled the trigger, cut its hand off clean. That only pissed it off though. It started pushing on the door, clawing. We were on one side pushing as best as we could, and it was on the other doing the same. That wood just wasn't going to hold, so someone tells us to keep our heads down. Suddenly the top half of the door is just gone. My ears were ringing and there are splinters everywhere. 2 or 3 of them just unloaded on the top of that door. I don't really know where it went after that. The police got there, I was still glued to the door, what was left of it. The sun was up before they got me off of it. They put me in a hospital for a while. A lot of people talked to me, but I didn't talk back. Not for a long, long time. When I got back home, I got a job from the landlord working on the farm. We didn't talk much, not about the thing. But I signed up for the army when I was 19 and he sat me down to drink some scotch as a send-off. I asked him right away what the police told him. The story they went with was a wild animal. Probably a wolf or maybe a bear that had migrated north. I asked him how he could say that when they had the hand. He looks at me stunned. He tells me that the hand never made it back to the station. The cop who had it in his car wrecked, drove into a tree, died on impact. The hand was never found, probably taken away by an animal. The cops, when they would acknowledge the hand existed at all, said it was simply the paw of a bear that looked like a human hand. I never talked to the landlord again. He went missing when I was in basic. Cops never found him. They said he owed some people some money and just ran away, but I don't think it's that simple. I never went back to those woods. I wouldn't even if I had the whole goddamn U.S. Army at my back. But that was a lie. When my mother died, I didn't think my father felt he had anything left, and that he might as well settle old scores. He went to those woods, and he never came back. The FBI was called, they did a show for everyone involved, but I knew they weren't really looking. I had to get one drunk and slip him a few 50s before he finally told me that they got a few calls about those woods every year, about someone up and vanishing. But that was all he wanted to tell me. Before he got up and left with the rest of his team, he wrote the rake on a napkin. I didn't know what it meant until I searched for it on the internet. Honestly, I would have rather not known.
Holy fuck, Mike.
Yeah, man, I think I shit my pants.
Like I said, wasn't sure you guys could stomach it.
Is that story really true?
Of course it is.
Fuck, man, I didn't know your grandpa went out like that.
What are you talking about? Grampy's sitting comfy in a home.
What do you mean he's in a home? You just said that story was true. What about the skinwalker?
Yeah, I said the story was true. I didn't say it was my story.
Oh, Christ, Mike, you are so fucked up.
Well, don't get your panties in a bunch, Robin. You two said you wanted a scary story, and I delivered. So tough.
Not cool, Mike.
Yeah, man.
Oh, whatever. I'm hitting the hay. You babies can stay out here and cry about it.
Sorry, Sarah. Sometimes Mike doesn't know when he's gone too far.
It's okay. I know he totally made up the story.
Think so?
Well, of course he did. There's no such thing as skinwalker or a rake or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right.
Well, I'm going to bed. Good night, Robin.
Night, Sarah. I can't believe he'd pull something like that. What a jerk. God, I really am a baby getting worked up over nothing. There is no such thing as a No such thing. There is no such thing as a skinwalker. There is no such thing, and I'm going to bed. Huh? What the fuck is that? Oh God. No, no, no. Please, no. Oh God, no. Please, please, no.